Hello, everybody. Good
Monday morning, the coolest day of the week to come.
morning. Did you say morning?
I said morning. Monday evening. There we go.
I was going to say,
The coolest day of the week.
not saying too much.
Yeah, it's a hot one out there. Please stay cool.
Steamy.
I won't say the word Chris doesn't like.
I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but if I don't like it, probably just best to leave it be.
Cinnamon update.
Fair enough. Yep.
Hi, Woody. You want to come up and say hi?
We got Mr. Vincent here.
Hello, Mr. Vincent. Say hi to everybody. You're supposed to turn around the other way, not show that part.
Why would he do that?
Oh, I know. He's a cat. He's got to show off his features.
Yes, he does.
Anyway.
But yeah, so anyways, yeah. Glad to have you all here. So just a little FYI, I think Mr. Nico is going to sit this one out this evening.
Yes, Mr. Nico has been ill.
Yes.
And is currently receiving treatment.
But he's hanging out upstairs.
On the new window seat. He likes the view.
Yep, so yeah, he's doing well up there at the moment. But yeah, he has a long road to go, so he's we're taking it a day at a time.
He needs to be separated to be fed, and he just got fed, so we want to make sure he has plenty of time to eat at his pace.
Yes.
So, because this one is a vulture.
Yep. Tiny bro. Tiny. Yeah, he is quite the vulture. But anyways, yeah, so, yeah.
It's been a week and a half.
Week and a half, yeah. So basically, Nico started getting a little icky, really getting icky.
About 2 weeks ago.
Pretty much right after we did the last episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been trips to the vet and the emergency clinic and all that good stuff.
But we have a diagnosis. He's getting treatment. It's just a long treatment.
Yes, it's going to be a few months. So, yeah, if you want to do something, I'd say go ahead and make a donation to your animal shelter.
Yes.
Yes, to your animal nonprofit for and just keep Mr. Nico in your thoughts.
Yes.
But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll check on him again halfway through the episode, see if he wants to come down and say hi. But today was a good day.
Today was a good day, and as we said, he really likes the new window seat that we just built. So we'll let him enjoy that.
Yes. But in the meantime, glad to have you all here. Couple other little news tidbits, just real quick. So we're actually going to be going back-to-back weeks. We will be back next Monday. We're going to do spirits that are associated or haunted places associated with the American Revolution.
Yes, this has been an interesting one to research.
Yeah.
And also remembering what we have done and have not done in other episodes.
Yep.
So.
And we do have confirmed that we will be doing some performing at Warriors in Bloom, which is going to be the first full weekend of August over at Agecroft Hall. So going to be doing that on the tavern stage. Yes, over there.
At 1 and 3?
That sounds about right.
And then we're alternating with Spooky Hollow.
Yeah, our friend Spooky Hollow Storytellers will be doing the other time slots.
Yep.
So.
And we will also have a booth as well.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So we'll be keeping really busy that weekend.
And July 19th and 20th, we're going to be at the Hanover Tavern for Spirits with the Spirits.
That's a Sunday, Monday.
Yes. So tickets are available on Hanover Tavern's website.
Which is hanovertavern.org.
Yep.
So
Chris will be guiding. I'll be one of the spirits.
So, yeah, all kinds of stuff going on. Yeah, happy summer or something.
Yep.
Stay cool.
And, of course, regular tours.
Of course, regular tours. But, yes, no heat stroke.
No.
Stay cool this week.
Hydrate.
Yep.
All the hydrations.
And speaking of cool, we're going to go ahead. We're going to
pop down to Florida.
Which is not really cold, but it's a neat place. All kinds of spooky stories. Hopefully you enjoyed some of the little videos that we did between, from our last trip down there a few weeks back.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, if you did catch those videos, some of the stories we have for you tonight will be a little familiar, maybe a little bit more fleshed out.
Yes, because there's only so much time we're allowed to do on those videos.
Yes.
So.
But yeah, so anyways, Florida, place of sunlight, salt air, crowded beaches, and of course bright postcards. But step just a little off the main road and the shadows start to gather. In this second volume of Haunted Florida, we return to the Sunshine State for another journey through hotels, theaters, old military ruins, historic neighborhoods, and coastal towns where the past does not seem ready to stay quiet. From the pink landmarks of St. Petersburg and St. Pete Beach to the darker corners of Tampa and Ybor City, then onwards to Barrier Islands and old Gulf Coast inns, these stories mix history, folklore, tragedy, and mystery. Some may be legend, some may be memories, and some may be something stranger. So settle in as we open the door once more to Haunted Florida.
Yes. So we're going to first go to St. Petersburg, and we're going to talk about the Pink Lady. This is the Vinoy Hotel. Now, the Vinoy Hotel in St. Petersburg looks like the kind of place that should have ghosts. It rises pink against the Florida sun. It's elegant, theatrical, as if it were built not simply to house guests, but to become a landmark in their memories. The hotel began with Ybor Vinoy Langner, a wealthy businessman from Pennsylvania who, according to the familiar story, was encouraged by his party guests to build something rather grand on the waterfront. Langner bought the land for $170,000, hired architect Henry Taylor, and moved with astonishing speed. The 375-room hotel was completed in only 10 months, just in time to open on New Year's Eve in 1925. Its color became part of its identity. The hotel's famous pink paint was a custom mixed, giving the Vinoy a soft, glamorous glow that made it stand apart from the more ordinary hotels of the era. When it first opened, Vinoy was a seasonal retreat, welcoming guests only from December through March, when the wealthy northerners escaped the cold and came south for the warmth, the leisure, and the luxury, aka the snowbirds. They came in impressive numbers. Over the years, the hotel welcomed celebrities, athletes, politicians, and some of the best-known figures in the early and mid-20th century. Hoover stayed there, so did Babe Ruth, James Stewart, and Calvin Coolidge. The Vinoy was not simply a hotel. It was a winter stage for America's famous and powerful. Then the history changed the building's role. During World War II, the United States took over the hotel and used it as a training school. After the war, the Vinoy was sold, and the old glamour began to fade. By 1974, the hotel closed its doors. Much of the contents were sold. For a time, one of Florida's most recognizable hotels stood as a relic of a more elegant age. Fortunately, the story did not end there. In the early 1990s, Renaissance Hotels and Resorts and the Vinoy Development Corporation took on a massive renovation. After 2 years of work, the Vinoy reopened, restored to much of its former grandeur, and in 2005, it earned a AAA 4-diamond status, a sign that the old Pink Hotel had reclaimed its place among Florida's great historic resorts. But some guests believe the Vinoy never fully emptied out. The stories told about the hotel spirits are not unusually violent or threatening. They are more mischievous, unsettling, strange. Lights flicker. Footsteps pass through the empty halls. Guests hear shuffling sounds, unexplained noises. Sometimes even what they describe as the dragging of chains.
Nice and creepy.
Yeah. Several of the most memorable accounts actually have come from visiting athletes. In 2003, Florida Marlins pitcher Scott Ryan Williamson reported an unnerving experience at the hotel. After turning off the lights in his room, he noticed a faint glow coming from the pool area. Then came the feeling of being watched. When he tried to sleep, he felt pressure on his back, as if someone were sitting on him. He later said that he also saw a man in a coat standing near the curtains. A strength coordinator for the Pittsburgh Pirates described seeing a transparent male figure near the desk in his room. Others have reported a formally dressed man walking in the hallways only to vanish completely. Another story involves Toronto Blue Jays reliever who checked into the hotel with his wife and children. His wife had been hesitant to stay there because of its haunted reputation, but eventually agreed. When he was away during batting practice, she called in distress. According to the story, she and the children had watched the water turn on and off by itself while the toilet flushed again and again, with no one touching it. They were staying in the old wing, which some employees have considered the hotel's most active area. Then there's room 521, perhaps the most famous haunted room in the Vinoy. Brandy Stark, a humanities professor and co-founder of Spirits of St. Petersburg, once stayed there. At first, she suspected many of the stories had been exaggerated by the room's reputation. But during her stay, she captured unexplained sounds of movement and a recording device that she had laid out in the room. Later that night, she felt what seemed like a presence walking along the side of the bed, and other guests told her that when they turned off the lights in 521, the closet door would mysteriously open on its own. The Vinoy has also said to have a lady in white. Her identity is uncertain. Some versions of the story claim she was made from the 1920s who witnessed a nationally watched murder case and then disappeared after receiving a one-way ticket to Europe. Other versions hint that her vanishing was not so simple. There are still stranger reports. Still, a figure has been seen looking out from the tower at night. Some claim that one of the smaller ballrooms where jazz bands once played, the old music can still be heard drifting through the air. Maybe the Vinoy is simply a beautiful old hotel wrapped in nearly a century of rumor. Or maybe some places become so full of memory that not every guest truly checks out.
It's a beautiful place.
It is a gorgeous place. I would love to stay there for a night.
We did not stay there. We took a little time and did a little stroll through the lobby, but...
Yeah, they had a few events going on, so we had to be very careful about where we were strolling.
Yeah.
Because we obviously did not want to film anybody in their events.
Or just we didn't want to party. We didn't want a party crash.
No. No.
Well, anyways, next story.
Just me while I reach for the screen. There's things up I'd like to be able to see when we have comments.
Next story, we don't have to go too far. X that out.
I am. We got little pop-ups everywhere here. There we go. Hey, now I can see comments.
Yep. So, yeah, next story, not too far. As a matter of fact, it's just a short walk down the road.
It's right across the water.
Yep.
Literally. There's a bay, hotel, other location.
Yep. So, not far from the grand pink elegance of the Vinoy Hotel is a much smaller St. Petersburg landmark with a much stranger reputation. Comfort Station 1, near the pier, is exactly what its name suggests, a public restroom. Mm-hmm. But this is no ordinary little utility building. It was designed by Henry Taylor, the same architect behind the Vinoy, and built in 1927. Over the years, some have suggested that Taylor had an interest in mystical numerology, and that the building may have been styled with something more mysterious in mind. That may be reading a lot into a restroom. But then again, this is Florida. The nearby pier had its own strange reputation in the 1970s, when some believed the area was a site of alien landings. Skeptics have suggested that the rumors may have grown from laser light displays around the old inverted pyramid, which could make the structure look a little like a flying saucer. Still, the ghost stories at Comfort Station 1 have lasted. The most famous is a mysterious woman in black patent leather shoes, usually reported in the women's restroom. Witnesses say they hear someone in the next stall and sometimes even hold a conversation with her. But when they step out, they find themselves alone. In one 1999 account, a visitor from Wisconsin heard movement nearby and thought it was her sister. "Heather, is that you?" she asked. An elderly voice answered, "No, it's Agnes." When asked how long she had been in St. Petersburg, Agnes reportedly replied, "A long, long time." The visitor saw a 1930-style shoe beneath the stall door, but outside, her sister insisted no one had entered and no one had left. So, spooky little restroom. And the next story, again, very close by. Every museum has its ghosts, even if most of them are only memories preserved behind glass. The St. Petersburg Museum of History, however, has been collecting those memories for more than a century. Its origins reach back to 1920, when Mary Wheeler Eaton founded the St. Petersburg Memorial Historical Society. 2 years later, the city granted the organization a permanent site after the Tampa Bay hurricane of 1921 destroyed the aquarium that had stood there. From that beginning, the museum grew into the oldest museum in Pinellas County, dedicated to collecting, preserving, and sharing the history of Florida, with a special focus on St. Petersburg and the Pinellas Peninsula. Today, its collections include more than 40,000 objects, while its archives hold more than 25,000 photographs, books, maps, and pieces of ephemera. I don't know why I just decided to leave a big word like that in there. Anyways, in other words, the building is full of the past. And according to local legend, not all of that past stays quiet. One of the strangest stories attached to the museum involves an Egyptian mummy. The legend claims that a ship captain once docked in St. Petersburg and found himself unable to pay the required fees. To keep his boat from being impounded, he supposedly traded a late dynasty female mummy he had been transporting. The mummy, as the story goes, did not appreciate being used as payment. Ever since, some have claimed that her spirit walks the halls. It's an entertaining story, but likely more legend than history. Mm-hmm. The museum's more persistent ghost is said to be a female entity known as Odette. She was reportedly attached to, or at least very fond of, a former marketing director. When he became upset, objects were said to break. Employees claimed to hear Odette calling his name. One staff member reportedly watched a velvet rope begin to swing as if someone had bumped it, even though she was alone. Odette also seems to have opinions about the museum displays. One wall, in particular, is said to be active. If something is wrong, she removes it. A mistake on a timeline was reportedly corrected, and afterward, the sign was left alone. Maybe Odette is a founder. Maybe she is a guardian. Or maybe, in a museum devoted to history, someone is still making sure that the record stays straight.
I will say, when I went and visited the museum, it was incredible when you walk in and you walk down the ramp, and there is the mummy, and then everything else is Florida history. Yeah, it was fascinating.
I did not get a chance to visit it with you, but maybe on another trip I will check it out. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it was a really cool little museum.
Granted, I like just about all museums.
Yeah.
Museums are cool. Yeah.
I would definitely go back to this. As I said, it was a really cool museum, and I found him a book there that he really liked.
I did. It's been moved. Well, it was the Eternal Charlie Wall.
Yeah. Charlie Wall was a mobster.
We'll get back to him because we have more on him actually in this episode.
But it was a fictional tale based loosely on him.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
In the meantime,
we're going to go to another hotel that's also pink.
Yes, another pink hotel on the other side of the peninsula.
Because pink in Florida.
Yes.
So this is the Hotel Don CeSar. We drove by it. We didn't get a chance to go in it.
Yeah, no, we didn't pause at that one. But it is an impressive building.
Very impressive building. This was built in 1928. The hotel became known as the Pink Palace. A place of extravagance, glamour, and seaside escape. But like many grand old hotels, the Don CeSar has collected more than guests. Over the years, staff and visitors have reported apparitions, strange noises, and the uneasy feeling that somebody unseen is still moving through the hallways. Some of those stories are connected with the hotel's years away from luxury. During World War II, this property was purchased by the Army and used as a hospital, a submarine spotting station, and later an Air Force convalescent center. Some believe the spirits felt there may be connected to those wartime patients, lingering in a place where recovery and grief once lived side by side. But the most famous ghost at the Don CeSar is said to be the hotel's original owner, Thomas Rowe. Rowe's story begins far from Florida during his years as a student in London in the 1890s. There he frequently attended the opera, and one night he was seeing his favorite play, Martiana, starring a beautiful young woman named Lucinda. According to the legend, Thomas fell in love with her immediately. The two began to meet regularly, but Lucinda's parents disapproved of the relationship. They took her back to Spain, and Thomas never saw her again. They promised to write to each other, but his letters were returned unopened. In time, Lucinda was said to have died of a broken heart. Before her death, Thomas supposedly received one final message from her. Time is infinite. I wait for you by our fountain. Thomas, now in America, vowed to never love another. When he built the Don CeSar, he included a replica of the fountain where he and Lucinda had once met. The hotel became his monument to beauty, success, and perhaps to a woman he never forgot. Rowe died in 1940, but according to the hotel lore, he didn't leave. In 1973, people began reporting seeing the figure of a gentleman in a white suit walking along the beach before vanishing. The description matched Thomas Rowe, who was known for wearing his signature white suit. Others claim to have been greeted at the hotel entrance by a smiling man who disappears when spoken to. His ghost has also been reported on the 5th floor, in the lobby, in the garden, and sometimes wearing a Panama hat. Occasionally, he's not alone. Some witnesses say he walks hand in hand with a beautiful raven-haired woman believed to be Lucinda. If the legend is true, then perhaps the Don CeSar is not haunted by sorrow at all. Perhaps it's haunted by a promise that was kept.
Oh, he's so cute. I love sweet. I mean, I love ghost stories, but
I love a romantic tale.
yeah.
Oops.
All right. And now, again, we don't have to go too far for this next one. The Don CeSar may be the famous pink landmark on St. Pete Beach, but 2 doors down, another building shares its history and, according to some, a few of its ghosts. Today, the old Don Vista building is home to the Suntan Art Center, but its story has always been tied to the hotel next door. In 1925, as work began on the grand pink castle that would become the Don CeSar, owner and developer Thomas Rowe lived in what is now the Don Vista building. When the hotel opened in January of 1928, the Don Vista became part of its daily life, serving as administrative offices and even as a bank for hotel guests. When Thomas Rowe died, the fortunes of the Don CeSar changed. World War II soon followed, and the property was purchased by the Army in 1942, serving as a hospital, an airplane and submarine spotting station, and later as an Air Force convalescence center. The gallery portion of the Don Vista building was even used to house the facility's firehouse and fire truck. After the war, the site continued to evolve. In 1945, the rehab facility closed and the property became a regional Veterans Administration office. By the 1950s, the smaller building had taken on a new community role, eventually becoming known as the Don Vista Community Center. Over the years, it also housed federal agencies before becoming home to the Suntan Art Center. But some believe Thomas Rowe still passes through. Here he is known as the Running Man. Witnesses describe a figure in 1930s-era clothing rushing through the halls and even through walls, carrying a briefcase and papers as if late for some important appointment. During one investigation, Brandy Stark and her team reportedly noticed the smell of alcohol in the air, which some connected to Rowe's old habits. Yet there is one place the Running Man is said to not enter, the upper floor. That area is believed to be watched over by a female spirit known as the Hostess. More recently, another presence has been reported as well, a figure in military dress blues seen marching through the building. Maybe the Don Vista simply echoes with all the purposes it has served: residence, office, hospital, government space, community center, and gallery. Or maybe some buildings just simply never stop working.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that was our last story from St. Pete. So we're now going to go back to Tampa.
Yep, so moving back up off the peninsula to the upper end of Tampa Bay to the city of Tampa.
Yes, and this is actually the hotel Chris and I stayed in while we were there for one night.
Yes, it was a beautiful hotel.
Oh, gorgeous hotel. I'd stay there again in a heartbeat.
Yes, and this is what the building today is now known as Le Méridien Tampa. But this hotel was not initially built for comfort.
No, it was actually built for authority. It was completed in 1905. The old federal courthouse was designed by James Knott Taylor, supervising architect of the United States Treasury. Taylor designed hundreds of public buildings across the country, and in Tampa, he gave the city a Beaux Arts landmark that reflected the confidence and order of the early 20th century. It was originally constructed to serve as the United States Post Office, courthouse, and custom house, a place where mail moved, legal arguments unfolded, and federal business passed through high ceilings and heavy stone. For decades, the building stood as a symbol of law. From 1984 to 1998, it was used exclusively to house the Tampa division of the Middle District. Then in 2003, the property was transferred to the city of Tampa through the Historic Surplus Property Program. The developer later entered into a long-term lease with the city and rehabilitated the building using historic tax credits. In 2014, the courthouse reopened as the Méridien Tampa, a hotel where guests now sleep in the rooms carved from the bones of its old federal authority. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places, but even with these polished floors, restored details, and luxury amenities, the building has not entirely escaped its past. And no figure connects Tampa's underworld to that quite like Charlie Wall. Again, the one that we just mentioned. Charles McKay Wall was born in 1880 to a prominent Tampa family. His father was a local physician. His mother was the daughter of former Tampa mayor. But Wall's path did not remain in respectable society. As a young man, he spent time in Tampa's gambling dens and eventually rose to the city's criminal world. By the early 20th century, he had become one of Tampa's most powerful underworld figures, with influence reaching into gambling, illegal numbers rackets, and political corruption. Wall operated out of Ybor City, surrounding himself with a network that crossed ethnic and neighborhood lines. Italians, Cubans, Irish associates, and political allies were all part of his world. One of the closest associates was Evaristo Tito Rubio, a Cuban mobster and co-owner of the El Dorado Club. The criminal empires rarely remained uncontested. By the late 1920s and 1930s, Wall was caught in a violent struggle for power against Ignacio Amtori and other rivals connected to Tampa's rackets. The conflict became part of what later became known as Tampa's Era of Blood. Figures connected to the underworld were gunned down, alliances were shifted, and the city's criminal politics became increasingly dangerous. Rubio was killed in 1938, and Torrini was shot in 1940 while sitting in a restaurant, and Wall himself survived an attempt on his life that same year. Through it all, the courthouse loomed nearby. Wall reportedly spent a great deal of time there in the 1930s and 40s, facing charges and legal pressure, while also operating in a world where judges, politicians, and law enforcement were sometimes compromised. In a building that meant to represent justice, Charlie Wall embodied the uneasy reality that justice could be manipulated, delayed, or bought. Then came his most famous public term. In 1950, Wall testified before a federal committee investigating the organized crime. According to accounts of his life, he exposed criminal networks, underworld secrets, and machinery that had helped Tampa's rackets thrive. It made him useful to investigators and dangerous to just about everybody else. Wall was murdered in his home on April 18th of 1955. The case was never solved. Some have suggested that the killing may have been ordered after the death of Santo Trafficante Sr. Once a powerful force in Tampa's underworld, with old protections gone, Wall may have become vulnerable. He was buried in Oaklawn Cemetery, but local legend suggests he's not entirely at rest. His ghost is said to haunt the courthouse steps. Witnesses have reportedly seen the figure of a man lingering outside the building, walking up and down as if waiting for a hearing that never comes. Some say it's Charlie Wall, still drawn to the place where his criminal life and public reckoning collided. Maybe he's seeking justice. Maybe he's seeking revenge. Or maybe after a lifetime spent evading the law, he cannot stop returning to the house of judgment. But Wall is not the only presence reported in the old courthouse. Guests and visitors have described disembodied voices in the halls. Some say they hear crying as if it was from those who were convicted there, or laughter from those who walked away free. Paranormal investigators and curious hotel guests have claimed strange responses through flashlights, spirit boxes, and other devices. sometimes interpreting the voices as former juries or courthouse figures who remember Wall and did not remember him fondly. One guest who stayed in the hotel in August of 2014 reported a quieter but unsettling experience. She had arrived late with a family. While others were sleeping, she had stayed awake watching television. Suddenly, she felt a strong breeze across one side of her face and sensed a presence nearby. Her first instinct was to look for a natural explanation. The large window was sealed. The air conditioning vent was on the other side of the room. At the time, she did not know the building's history. Only later did she learn from a relative from Tampa about her hotel's haunted reputation. Others have reported cold spots, unexplained breezes, the sensation of being touched in the restaurant. Maybe these are only the ordinary drafts and sounds of an old building transforming for modern use. Old courthouses creak, hotels settle. Stories grow up in places where history is heavy. But sometimes those buildings remember too much. And in Tampa's old federal courthouse, the line between the law and crime was crossed so often that something might still be waiting on the steps, asking for one final verdict.
Mm-hmm. So, The Immortal Charlie Wall, the book that Beth got for me, basically it goes a fictionalized version of what happens if Charlie Wall didn't get murdered in 1955.
What if he survived?
Yes. The attempt still happened, but it was botched, and Charlie Wall lives for many, many years thereafter. And the book basically takes place about 30 years later in the 1980s, with him being a very well-aged old man at this point in time, with his days of being a mobster well behind him. So, so very interesting book. If you get the opportunity to check it out, I highly recommend it. And next up, we're still sticking to the Gulf Coast. We have another story from Tampa, just a short walk from the federal courthouse. But this one, completely different nature. This is a building that seems to belong as much to memory as to brick and plaster. The Tampa Theatre opened in October of 1926, during the golden age of movie palaces. It was built to be more than a place to watch films. It was designed as an escape. Guests stepped in from the heat and noise of downtown Tampa and found themselves inside a dream of ornament, comfort, and theatrical illusion. The architecture was lavish, the amenities were modern, and the atmosphere was unlike anything many visitors had ever seen. It also offered something remarkable for the time: air conditioning.
Which is much needed.
Yes. Tampa Theatre was the first commercial building in the metro area to have it, which meant that for the price of a quarter, guests could escape not only into a movie, but into cool, luxurious air. In Florida, that alone must have felt close to magic. The theater quickly became one of Tampa's favorite gathering places. In the 1920s and 1930s, as moviegoing became part of American life, Tampa Theatre was packed with people seeking glamour, laughter, romance, newsreels, music, and the shared hush that falls over a crowd when the lights go down. But time changes even the grandest places. By the 1950s, families were moving to the suburbs. Televisions were becoming more affordable. The downtown movie palace, once the center of a night out, began to struggle. Across the country, theaters like Tampa Theatre lost audiences, revenue, and relevance. By 1973, this beautiful building was scheduled to be torn down so the land could be used for something more profitable. It nearly became another lost landmark. Then, the Arts Council of Hillsborough County stepped in. The City Council agreed to cancel the demolition and purchase the building. In 1977, it reopened to the public, offering films, concerts, and community events. In 1978, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. A decade later, when Tampa created its city landmark designation, Tampa Theatre was among the first buildings recognized. But survival did not mean the theater's trials were over. In 1991, fires swept through the building, damaging much of its beautiful interior. For a place built on illusion, atmosphere, and visual splendor, the damage was devastating. Yet, once again, Tampa Theatre came back. The Tampa Theatre Foundation spent a year restoring the space to its former beauty, bringing back the magic that had first stunned audiences in 1926. Perhaps that is why the ghost stories feel so natural here. A building like Tampa Theatre is not simply occupied. It absorbs and collects first dates, childhood memories, old songs, nervous performers, devoted employees, regular patrons, applause, smoke, silence, and grief. After nearly a century, maybe some of those impressions remain. The theater itself has embraced its reputation as one of the most haunted places in the Tampa Bay area. Visitors have reported mysterious voices, cold touches, and the unsettling feeling of being tapped on the shoulder when no one is there. Investigators have recorded strange sounds and unexplained responses. Staff members have told stories that make the building feel less abandoned after hours than quietly attended. Among the best-known spirits is the Lady in White. She is said to appear in the towering balcony, moving gracefully among the rows as if still searching for her seat, or perhaps for someone she lost. Her dress is said to flow as she gazes toward the stage before vanishing. Some versions of the legend claim she is looking for a fiancé who died at the site before the theater was built. Others say she herself died nearby, perhaps in a carriage accident. Like many theater ghosts, her story shifts depending on who's telling it, but the image remains the same. A pale figure in the balcony, watching the stage as if waiting for a performance that never ends. Then there is seat 308. For years, it was considered one of the most active places in the theater. More than once, people claimed to see a man in a fedora sitting there when the building was closed. One staff member reportedly called out to him, only to watch him stand and disappear. Paranormal investigators later recorded near that seat, and one recording seemed to capture a man's voice responding to their questions. There is a wonderfully practical note to the story. During renovations, the theater replaced its seats, so the original seat 308 no longer exists in quite the same way. That detail does not end the legend. If anything, it makes it a little more interesting. Was the haunting attached to one physical chair, to that spot in the room, or to the theater itself? The strongest personality in the building may be Think Finley, a projectionist who worked at Tampa Theatre for decades. In 1965, he suffered a heart attack while showing a film and later died from the damage to his heart. According to staff and visitors, Fink never fully left the projection booth. His presence is often described not as frightening, but dutiful. People have reported seeing him in the booth or even catching his image in photographs. Others smell cigarette smoke near the back rows of the balcony, even though smoking has long been forbidden. The scents of coffee, cigarettes, and lavender aftershave have been linked to his old routine. Projectionists have also reported feeling a tap on the shoulder, as if someone were reminding them when it was time to change reels. If Fink haunts Tampa Theatre, he seems less like a restless spirit and more like a loyal employee still making sure the show runs properly. Another spirit carries a darker story. Robert Lanier was a ticket taker at the theater in the 1950s. One evening, he never made it home from work. He was found behind the ticket booth where he had worked, the victim of a violent attack. His killing remained unsolved, and some believe his spirit still lingers in the theater, tied to the place where his life ended and where justice never fully arrived. Not every presence at the Tampa Theatre feels tragic, though. Rosa Rio, the beloved organist associated with the theater's mighty Wurlitzer, is remembered with affection. The 1,400-pipe instrument was installed to accompany silent films, and Rosa played it for years, living to the remarkable age of 107. After her death, staff claimed to hear the organ playing when the public had gone home. She is said to be protective of the instrument. In one story, a theater manager nearly fell into the orchestra pit, only to feel as if something redirected her fall away from the organ. If that was Rosa, then hers is not a haunting of fear, but of care. And finally, there's the trickster. This spirit is said to play pranks on guests, performers, and staff. a fitting presence in a building devoted to illusion. In a theater, after all, not every mystery has to be mournful. Some may simply be mischievous. Together, these spirits form something larger than a collection of ghost stories. They feel like pieces of a theater's memory. The lady in white watches from the balcony. The man from seat 308 waits in the dark. Fink keeps to the projection booth. Robert Lanier remains near the front of the house. Rosa guards the organ, and the trickster plays in the shadows. And Tampa Theatre endures around all Tampa Theatre endures around them all. Blah, blah, blah. After the last audience leaves, after the curtains settle, after the lights are lowered and the doors are locked, perhaps the old movie palace is not empty. Perhaps in some quiet corner of downtown Tampa, the show is still going on.
So Beverly commented about living that long.
Yeah, I know.
That was amazing.
107. All right. You carry on. I'm going to check on Buddy Boy.
Okay. So our next stop is still in Tampa. We're going to the Fort Brooke Municipal Parking Garage. A municipal parking garage is not the first place most people expect to find a ghost story, but in Tampa, even parking garages have layers of history underneath it. The Fort Brooke parking garage stands near the site of Old Fort Brooke, a military post ordered in 1823 by the Secretary of War John C. Calhoun, and it was established in early 1824, built on the east bank of the Hillsborough River near Hillsborough Bay. The post was named for Colonel George Mercer Brooke and became an important outpost during the Seminole Wars. From Fort Brooke, soldiers marched into some of the most violent chapters of Florida's territorial history, including the conflict remembered as the Dade Battle, often called the Dade Massacre in older accounts, in which Francis Dade and more than 100 of his men were killed while traveling toward Fort King, nearby present Osala. The main fort once stood near the area of today's Tampa's Convention Center, and over time the old military landscape disappeared beneath the modern city. But not everything was gone. When Tampa began construction on the Fort Brooke parking garage in 1980, workers uncovered a forgotten cemetery containing the remains of soldiers, civilian settlers, and Seminole people. Hello, buddy.
This is our patient.
Yes.
He's looking pretty good. But you might notice...
He needs a collar back. Yes,
Yes.
He's got several spots where he got shaved.
Yes. He has a little cuff. And
a tail cuff, too.
a tail cuff, too. And his belly is shaved. I'm not going to show that to you, though. That would be offensive.
Yes.
To him.
To him. Anyway, so civilian settlers and Seminole people. The soldiers and civilians were reburied at Oak Lawn Cemetery, while the Seminole remains were returned to the Seminole tribe to be reinterred with ceremony. Those involved reportedly tried to treat the discovery with care. Still, some have wondered whether every burial was found. Since then, parking patrons have claimed to hear phantoms drumming and chanting. Others report seeing shadowy figures move through the garage, and there's one moment, and then they're gone the next. Maybe it's only the sound of traffic, concrete, and imagination, or maybe beneath Tampa's modern streets, the ground still remembers what the city paved over. I mean, we've talked about graves being moved before and getting missed and causing hauntings.
We walked right by that place.
We
that
did.
was what the historic marker was for.
Yep.
Yeah. But, all right. Next, still Tampa.
Tampa's got a lot of ghosts in it.
Yes.
We did not get a chance to do Ghost Tour.
We did not. Yeah, it was...
That was a one-night trip.
It was a whirlwind. But yes, we did get to see a lot of things on our own. Including this next location. Which, yes... So, if Tampa does have a haunted heart, it may be Ybor City. Founded in 1885, Ybor was built by immigrants who came to Florida searching for work. And yes, we did just talk about Ybor a little bit with relation to Charlie Wall and the courthouse. So, yes.
So this is literally right near each other. This is where he operated.
Yeah. So it was a melting pot. You had Cubans, Italians, Spanish, and other communities shaping its streets, its culture, and especially its cigar factories. For decades, the smell of tobacco drifted through the neighborhood, and workers filled the factories, restaurants, boarding houses, social clubs, and small wooden homes that made Ybor one of Florida's most distinctive places. But Ybor City was never only a place of industry and ambition. It was also a place of fire, fever, violence, and loss. In the early years, much of the neighborhood was built quickly with wood frame structures standing close together. That made fire a constant threat. The largest fire in Tampa's history began on March 1st, 1908, in the roof of a boarding house on 12th Avenue. The flames spread with terrifying speed, tearing across more than 17 city blocks. Homes, businesses, and lives were destroyed. The full human cost remains uncertain, but the...
He's got to take center stage.
Yes. Nice. Of course, this is not a funny section at all, but
he's got to take center stage.
The full human cost remains uncertain, but the memory of that disaster still clings to Ybor's story. Some store owners have claimed that late at night they can still hear the laughter of children who died in the fire. It is the kind of sound that might be dismissed in daylight, but in an old district built over so much grief, it becomes harder to ignore. Disease brought its own shadows. Yellow fever outbreaks passed through Tampa, and immigrant neighborhoods like Ybor suffered deeply. Families who came seeking a better life often found themselves living in crowded conditions, vulnerable to illness, fire, and hard labor. The history is not simply spooky, it is quite human. Then came Prohibition, and Ybor's reputation grew darker. In the 1920s and 1930s, the neighborhood had become a center of gambling, bootlegging, and organized crime. The aforementioned Charlie Wall, Tampa's gambling czar, used political connections and underworld alliances to build a bouletta gambling operation. One of the most infamous places connected to that world was the El Dorado Lounge, located at 8th Avenue and 14th Street. It was lavish, dangerous, and known as a refuge for underworld figures. The El Dorado was more than a nightclub or gambling den. It became part of Tampa's violent criminal landscape. Between 1930 and 1959, the city saw more than 25 gangland killings, many of them tied to Ybor City. During those years, gambling halls, social clubs, street corners, and businesses connected to the underworld became scenes of ambushes, drive-by shootings, and revenge killings. The violence made Ybor City feel like a place where cigar smoke, music, politics, and organized crime all drifted through the same streets. Ybor's ghosts, then, do not all come from old folklore. Some seem to rise from gunfire, smoke, and the unsettled memory of a neighborhood where ambition and violence once walked side by side. Among the most famous haunted buildings in Ybor is the former Don Vista Hotel. Built in 1895, the building served multiple purposes over time, including as a hotel, a meeting house known as El Bien Publico, and a medical clinic. Its history alone is enough to make the place feel layered and uneasy. According to its legends, Jose Luis Avenala Jr. and a ghostly nurse haunt the basement. Other stories speak of a sinister doctor, strange experiments, and bodies disposed of in an incinerator. Those claims are difficult to separate from urban legend, but the building's reputation has persisted. When the Don Vista operated as a hotel, room 305 was considered especially active. Guests reported seeing the figure of a man at the foot of the bed. Others described flickering lights, footsteps, doors opening and closing, and faucets turning on and off by themselves. Nearby, the Cuban Club carries its own haunted reputation. Built in 1917 as a social club for Tampa's Cuban community, it was once a center of culture, music, recreation, and mutual aid. But its ghost stories are tied to tragedy. One spirit is said to be an actor who died on the stage. Another is said to be a board member killed during a heated dispute. Visitors have reported a piano playing by itself, an elevator moving with no one inside, and figures in period clothing walking the halls. The old Florida Brewing Company building adds yet another layer. Before Ybor City existed, the property was the site of Government Spring. Discovered in 1824 and used as a water source for Fort Brooke, later became a swimming pool, an ice factory, and eventually the brewery itself. Eventually, the brewery itself opened in 1890 by Vicente Martinez Ybor. The brewery operated for decades before the building passed through other uses, including as a cigar company and even a Cold War bomb shelter. By the 1980s, the structure had fallen into ruin. Its tower and roof collapsed, but in 1999, it was restored. According to legend, however, the restoration did not quiet the building. One story says that during an opening celebration, a fight broke out after too much free beer, leaving one man fatally injured. Visitors now claim to encounter the presence of a drunken man still lingering around the building. Taken one by one, these stories might sound like scattered hauntings, but together they form something larger. Ybor City does not feel haunted by a single ghost. It feels haunted by its own history, by immigrants who worked themselves into the walls, by children lost to fire, by families broken by disease, by gamblers, gunmen, performers, doctors, and dreamers. Some neighborhoods forget their dead. Ybor City seems to keep them speaking for themselves.
I will say, if you ever take cruises out of Tampa, Ybor City is not far from the cruise terminal. So it's an excellent place to get your hotel the night before, enjoy a little culture and food. There's some excellent bars there that Chris and I went to. And, then hop on your cruise the next day. That's all we plan to do. Mm-hmm. Any comments, questions?
Oh, just glad to see Mr. Nico.
He's a good boy.
Yeah.
Just want him to be a healthy boy again.
Yeah, he's having a good day. But there'll be some ups and downs, but today's a good day.
All right, so now we're going to head off to one of the state parks. And there are two places called Fort DeSoto. One is a national memorial, one is the state park. We're going to the state park. They're across the water from each other. Right. So Fort DeSoto does not look like a place that should feel haunted. It looks like Florida at its most beautiful. Blue water, white sand, seabirds, palms, and long stretches of shoreline where the Gulf seems to breathe in and out. Please wear your sunscreen. I got horribly burned here.
And you were wearing sunscreen.
And I was wearing sunscreen. Yeah.
To be perfectly clear.
I'm still peeling. Just saying. Anyway, located on the south-southwest of St. Petersburg, the park is made up of 5 offshore keys. Mandolin Key, St. Jean Key, St. Christopher Key, Bon Fortune Key, and the largest of them all, Mullet Key. Today, bridges and causeways connect the islands, and visitors come by toll road for beaches, fishing, camping, kayaking, and quiet afternoons by the water. But beneath that peaceful surface is a very long and complicated history. Go ahead.
Yeah. Long before it was a park, this area was home to the Tocobaga people, who lived along its shores and barrier islands of Tampa Bay from roughly 1000 to 1500 CE. They relied on the waters around them, gathered fish, clams, conch, oysters, and whelks from the Gulf, supplementing their diet with game and local plants. To begin Fort DeSoto's story with soldiers or tourists would be to begin too late. These islands were known, used, and lived upon long before European maps gave them new names. In the 1500s, Spanish expeditions entered the region, including that of Pamfilo de Narvaez in 1529 and Hernando de Soto a decade later. Their arrival marked the beginning of a brutal colonial era that reshaped Florida and devastated indigenous communities across the region. Centuries later, the same barrier islands attracted a different kind of attention. In 1849, U.S. Army engineers surveyed the area for possible coastal defense use and recommended both Egmont Key and Mullet Key. For years, however, no permanent fortification was built. When the Civil War began in 1861, Union forces used the waters between Mullet and Egmont Keys as part of a blockade, watched from the heights of Egmont Key Lighthouse. The fort itself came later, in the wake of the Spanish-American War. In 1898, as Tampa became an important staging ground for the conflict in Cuba, local citizens demanded military defenses for Tampa Bay. The war ended quickly, but plans for the post continued. Construction began on Mullet Key in November of 1898, Within months, workers had built a wharf extending into Tampa Bay, along with a mess hall, office, stable, workers' quarters, and a narrow-gauge railway that helped move materials across the island. At first, the post was known as Mullet Key Military Reservation and operated as a sub-post of Fort Dade on nearby Egmont Key. In April of 1900, it was renamed Fort DeSoto. By the early 1900s, the post had mortar batteries, barracks, a hospital, a guardhouse, workshops, a bakehouse, and storehouses. At its height, Fort DeSoto was home to a garrison of around 125 troops, but like many coastal defenses built for wars that had already changed, it never became the active battlefield its planners imagined. In 1909, the troops were transferred to Fort Morgan, Alabama, leaving only a caretaker detachment behind. During World War I, Fort DeSoto was briefly regarrisoned, though only with a small force. By 1923, both Fort DeSoto and Fort Dade were abandoned. Storms battered the old military buildings, and in 1932, Battery Bigelow collapsed and sank into the Gulf. The islands passed back and forth between county and federal control. Pinellas County purchased land on Mullet Key in 1938, only for the War Department to reclaim it during World War II as part of a bombing range connected to MacDill Airfield. After the war, the land returned to the county. By then, many of the military structures had been removed, damaged, or destroyed. Fort DeSoto Park opened in December of 1962 and was officially dedicated the following year. In 1977, its surviving batteries were placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Today, the park preserves rare coastal artillery, including Fort DeSoto's surviving 12-inch mortars and two 6-inch Armstrong guns relocated from nearby Fort Dade. The reconstructed quartermaster storehouse now serves as a museum, giving visitors a glimpse of the military world that once occupied the island. But military history is only one layer of Mullet Key. From 1889 into the 1930s, the island also housed the Mullet Key Quarantine Station. During that period, Tampa Bay faced repeated threats of yellow fever, and travelers arriving in Florida could be isolated there if they were believed to pose a risk. The station included more than a dozen buildings, including a hospital set hundreds of feet from shore, built over the water on pilings. Those without symptoms stayed inland, while the sick remained in the hospital. Not everyone recovered. That history gives one of Fort DeSoto's ghost stories its sorrowful edge. According to park legend, a woman once quarantined on Mullet Key was devastated by the news that her children had died during the yellow fever outbreak. Some say her grief broke her. Her spirit is now said to be heard crying for them, and occasionally seen searching the island as if still trying to find her way back to the family she lost. Other reported hauntings seem tied to the fort itself. Visitors have described phantom footsteps in the old military spaces, especially near the powder room. Around sunset, hushed voices are said to echo from the southernmost bunker. A male apparition, dressed like a soldier, has reportedly been seen walking the fort grounds, still moving through the ruins of a post that has been inactive for generations. There is also a lighter, stranger story near the toll plaza, the ghost of a fisherman. He is said to appear fishing in the grass, sometimes flirtatious, especially with women, before vanishing as quickly as he came. In a place with so many heavy histories, even the local legends seem to allow room for one spirit who is more mischievous than mournful. The most modern tragedy connected to Mullet Key came on May 9, 1980, when the freighter MV Summit Venture struck the Sunshine Skyway Bridge during a storm, causing a massive span of the southbound lane to collapse into the water. 35 people were killed. A makeshift morgue was established on Mullet Key, and bodies were brought to Andrew Potter Pier before being transferred to the coroner's office in Largo. Because of that connection, some visitors have wondered whether certain apparitions near the park might be tied to the bridge disaster. Others speak of phantom figures near the water, or even visions connected to those who jumped from the bridge in later years. Those stories should be handled carefully because they are not distant legends. They belong to living memory, to families and to grief that is still quite real. That may be what makes Fort DeSoto so unsettling. It is not one haunted building with one famous ghost. It is an island landscape where history arrived in waves. Indigenous homeland, colonial contact, military ambition, quarantine, abandonment, war, recreation, and tragedy. Each era left something behind. Some of it can be seen in brick, concrete, cannon, and museum glass. Some of it may be harder to name. By day, Fort DeSoto is one of the most beautiful places on Florida's Gulf Coast. But at sunset, when the beach empties, the bunkers cool, and the wind moves through the old military walls, it is easy to imagine that Mullet Key has not forgotten any of it.
So we have a little more script than we have time for, so we'll just have to ship that to Florida Part 3.
Oh.
Because we're at 9:30.
That's fine.
So, Florida's haunted stories rarely stay in one place. They drift from hotel rooms to old theaters, from courthouse steps to island forts, and from the city streets to the quiet inns in the Gulf. Maybe that's because Florida has always been a place of arrivals and departures. People come seeking warmth, reinvention, work, escape, or rest. But in these stories, not everybody leaves completely. As always, whether you hear these tales as history, folklore, or something just lingering beyond the explanation, they remind us that every bright landscape will have a shadow. Thanks for joining us on the second journey through haunted Florida. Until next time, keep your eyes open, listen closely, and remember, even in the sunshine, something may be waiting in the dark. And we'll see you all next week. Any last questions?
No lingering questions.
Okay. Vincent's over here to say good night too.
Yes. Go say good night, buddy.
Good night, little buddy.
Yeah. And thank you very much for watching, Beverly.
Yes.
Glad you could chime in and check us out this evening. And if you did not catch this live, no worries. We're going to go ahead. We're going to drop this on YouTube shortly, so you can catch it over there.
Yes.
But in the meantime, hope
Have
you
a
all
good
have a good
night.
one, and we will see you next week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Yes, I know.
It's on you.
It's on me.